I'm Katie Nolan, and I have a new podcast called Casuals. It's a podcast for people who like sports a normal amount. Casuals is a twice-a-week hang with me and my friends from across comedy, sports, and entertainment, where we talk about all the funny, weird, interesting stuff happening in and around the world of sports. So whether you're a diehard fan or just vaguely sports curious, Casuals is the podcast for you. You can find Casuals on the SiriusXM app, Pandora, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Give it a try. What's the worst that could happen?
Building a business may feel like a big jump, but OnDeck Small Business Loans can help keep you afloat. With lines of credit up to $100,000 and term loans up to $250,000, OnDeck lets you choose the loan that's right for your business. As a top-rated online small business lender, OnDeck's team of loan advisors can help you find the right business loan to fit your needs. Visit OnDeck.com for more information. Depending on certain loan attributes, your business loan may be issued by OnDeck or Celtic Bank. OnDeck does not lend in North Dakota. All loans and amounts subject to lender approval.
By an unspeakable act, the apocalypse would occur soon.
More white supremacist groups, more anti-government groups.
David Koresh,
Ruby Ridge Siege.
Timothy McVeigh, more than 80 people dead.
Bombed a federal building in Oklahoma City.
By an unspeakable act, there is so little hope left.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, this is Lieutenant Lynch. May I help you? Yeah, there's 75 men around our building and they're shooting at us in Mount Carmel. Mount Carmel? Yeah, tell them there are children and women in here and to call it off. All right, hello? I hear gunfire. Oh, shit. Hello? Who is this? Hello? Call it off! Who is this? Hello? Yeah, this is Lynch.
Hey, Lynch?
Yeah.
That's kind of a funny name there.
Ah.
Oh, listen, no.
Now, who am I speaking with?
This is David Koresh.
Okay, David.
The Notorious. What did you guys do that for?
Well, David, what I'm doing is I'm trying to establish some communication links with you.
No. Let me tell you something.
Yes, sir.
You see, you brought a bunch of guys out here and you killed some of my children. We told you we wanted to talk. No, how come you guys try to be ATF agents? How come you try to be so big all the time?
Okay, David.
Now, there's a bunch of us dead. There's a bunch of you guys dead. Now that's your fault.
The Branch Davidians. To talk about this Christian group known as the Branch Davidians, we first need to introduce the Seventh Day Adventist Church. The Seventh Day Adventist Church is a religious group. It's a Protestant Christian denomination, which is distinguished by its observance of Saturday, the seventh day of the week, in the Christian and Hebrew calendar as the Sabbath. Its emphasis on the imminent second coming of Jesus Christ and the end of days. The Branch Davidians is a fringe offshoot of the Seventh Day Adventist Church. The Branch Davidians emerged from the Davidian Seventh Day community. A guy named Benjamin Roden established the Branch Davidians in 1955. This is a group that are known for their apocalyptic beliefs, and then in the 1990s, known for their leader, one Mr. David Koresh. The Branch Davidians believed in the imminent end of the world and identified the American government as the lamb-like beast of the book of Revelation. Now, much of the Bible is open to interpretation, but with some understanding, the second beast that appears in Revelation poses as a lamb, someone who may present himself as a Messiah, but actually is a false Messiah whose speech and talk is satanic in nature. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs, it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast. It deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast, who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man. That number is 666. In the 1980s, David Koresh became the leader of the Branch Davidians. As the head of the Branch Davidians, Koresh claimed to be its final prophet. His apocalyptic Bible teachings, prophecies, including interpretations of the book of Revelation, the seven seals, and the end of days, attracted various followers. The group lived at the Mount Carmel Center, which was a large property near Waco, Texas. And the Davidians had their own flag. The flag depicted a six-winged serpent and a star, which resembled a Star of David when viewed from afar, flying over top of the seven seals. David Koresh was born in Houston, Texas on August 17th, 1959. His parents were young and not married. I would describe his upbringing as dysfunctional, and David Koresh was not his birth name. He was born Vernon Wayne Howell.
Wonder why he changed it.
You know what I mean, Vern? His mother was 14-year-old Bonnie Sue Clark, and his dad was 20-year-old Bobby Wayne Howell. And some details of Koresh's early life vary among the different sources that are out there.
Just like Jesus Christ himself, not much of his childhood is known.
After 2 years, his parents split up. Eventually, little Vernon would go to live with Grandma, his mother's mom, and she will briefly raise him as her own, to the point of it was implied that she was actually his mother. And they gave off this appearance, especially within the confines of most company. So when his mother Bonnie, his actual mother Bonnie, would come and visit, she would pretend to be an aunt. I mean, of course, that's strange. We've heard of those types of scenarios before, but this seems a little odd and a little more askew to me, because you would think that Bonnie would, when she's around, that she would just pretend to be the older sister rather than an aunt, which means she's the sister of her own mother.
Well, Bobby Wayne, his father, at 20 years old, why would he be interested in a 14-year-old? It's just a little strange.
When he was about 5 years old, he did go back to living with his real mother and her new husband. And this was after being brought up to speed on things, right? Learning the truth about all of the family's secrets and who his real mother was. Koresh would later say that it was around this time that a male relative started molesting him. Koresh described his childhood as lonely, struggling with poor study skills and dyslexia, which led him to being placed in special education classes. Some of his troubles learning actually came from poor eyesight. He had quite poor eyesight when he was little. He was pretty horribly bullied as well by the other boys at school. He was called horrible names and had long-running horrible nicknames, some that are so offensive that I don't feel comfortable repeating any of them. Some of the bullying was sexual in nature. There was sexual assault, according to Koresh and some others, with some reports stating that he was gang raped by some older boys when he was just a small boy.
Yeah, look what you did, you bullies. You turned this kid into a pedophile with a messiah complex.
But then he started to grow up and he got good at sports, which was a huge transformation for him for his childhood. His interest in sports and physical development brought him some improvements. But he still dropped out of Garland High School anyway in his junior year. As we said, David Koresh wasn't great at school, and he wasn't great at work either. He tried various jobs, but was either fired or would eventually quit them. At the age of 19, he had a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old girl who became pregnant. The teenage mother thought that David Koresh was unfit to be the father of the kid, so she moved away and refused to see him again, and thus he never saw this baby, which was his firstborn. It was his daughter.
Well, obviously, he's going to have a lot of confidence issues when you have this weird situation. You have a young mother, so she's not able to take care of you. You're passed off to your grandmother, and then you find out that, well, now that my mother's in a better situation, she's going to go, surprise, I'm actually your mother. So this, I think, would lend itself to some confidence issues and maybe a lot of other issues, especially if a child doesn't feel safe.
Yeah, and him feeling safe is complicated by the fact that he was bullied because of his learning disabilities when he was a kid. And some of that too, I know that bullying still goes on today, and it's unfortunate and something that we are doing better about policing within our schools. And it's carried on and migrated a bit online, quite heavily online, especially for a lot of these poor kids that get bullied over the internet and over social media. But I hope, there's a big part of me that hopes that the bullying that he experienced was somewhat a sign of the times, or more so a sign of the times than it would be today based off of his.
Well, see, I think it'd actually be harsher online, because I would assume that there'd be a percentage of kids that wouldn't say it to your face. And so be a lot easier to text or type to a kid. So I can imagine growing up in these times.
Yeah, harsh online, but gang rape is pretty harsh. Pretty downright harsh.
Yeah, but I was speaking in general. Maybe you should pay attention. Thank you.
This is so around the same time, right? David Koresh, he's going through a lot of changes. This 16-year-old girl who he got pregnant, she moves away, refuses to let him be a part of her life, and thus he doesn't get to see his daughter. I don't know how involved he would have been anyway. It's too tough to say. I took a lot of looks at this part and this portion of his early life, and it's difficult to say if he would have stepped up and been or attempted to be a legit father. But regardless, he didn't get the opportunity to do that. Now, but he does start to pull some things together here, Captain. This is when he became a born-again Christian and wanted to kind of change his ways. He became born again in the Southern Baptist Church, and he later joins his mother's denomination, and she is a member of the Seventh Day Adventist Church. He's 20 years old at this point. Now he starts up a relationship with the pastor's 15-year-old daughter.
That's just bizarre.
And this is not something that the pastor approved of. But Koresh wanted to marry the girl. And so he prayed to God for answers and guidance on the matter, or at least he says that he prayed to God for answers and guidance on the matter. And so as this story goes here, Captain, Koresh allegedly, during this time of praying for guidance, he opens his eyes only to find his Bible sitting there in the open position. It was previously closed before he closed his eyes. He opens his eyes and his Bible is open to Isaiah 34:16, which reads, "Look in the scroll of the Lord and read. None of these will be missing. Not one will lack her mate. For it is his mouth that has given the order, and his spirit will gather them together. So with his Bible in hand, he approached the pastor and explained the open Bible story to him, proclaiming this to be a sign from God, that it was God that wanted him to have the pastor's daughter for a wife. The pastor wasn't so easily fooled. He dismissed the suggestion out of hand and forbade Koresh from ever seeing his daughter again.
Well, good for him, because I would have said, hey, want to be Jesus boy, how about you pray to God so you don't be a pedophile, you freaking creep?
But Koresh was like TLC T-Boz, so he creeped. Yeah, just keep it on the down low. Nobody's supposed to know. But Koresh gets caught, and they get found out, and this gets him expelled from the church and from the congregation as a whole.
Well, when you're looking for signs, you're going to find one.
Well, I'll go and say this. This is completely absurd, okay? I'm not saying that he didn't open his eyes and his Bible was suddenly open. Let's pretend that happened for a moment. But the reason why it is absurd, think about a Bible. Think of how short that portion of the scripture is. Isaiah 34:16. It's a whole 3 sentences. So what I'm pointing out here is, how would anybody be able to look at an open Bible that is 2 pages long, appearing to be 2 pages in front of your face, and go, oh, that's the one. Out of these 2 pages, here's the 3 sentences that God is trying to tell to me, he wants me to read these 3 sentences.
Yeah, chances are he was sitting in the corner holding his Bible in one hand and pulling on his pee-pee in the other. And this vision came to him of this 15-year-old girl, and he said, oh, well, there's my sign.
Even if it's one of those tiny little Bibles with maybe you only have a reading on each page, who is he to decide which of the 2 pages he's supposed to read or that is supposed to be the message? So, I mean, it's completely...
But he's the prophet.
...backwards as hell, and I'm sure that, look, the pastor probably didn't need to see through that portion of the story. He just likely didn't want this man being with his 15-year-old daughter or handing over his 15-year-old daughter to this grown man.
And I'm not trying to justify anything that David did, but when you come from a situation where your father is 20, your mother is 14 when they have you, so that seems like a little more normalcy for you to be into somebody younger, but also anybody that is sexually abused or physically abused, or they have some kind of traumatic thing that happens to them when they're younger, they normally are attracted to people of the same age of when that abuse happened to them, if that makes any sense.
So now we're at the summer of 1981 on our timeline here, and Koresh's next move was to go out to Waco, Texas. Remember, he's just been excommunicated from the church and congregation.
Yeah.
So this is where and when he joins this other group, the Branch Davidians. So the summer of 1981, he goes out to Waco, Texas, where he joined the Branch Davidians. Benjamin Roden, who had originated the Branch group in 1955, died in 1978. So by the time that Koresh gets there, the founder, if you will, of the Branch Davidians, Benjamin Roden, has recently passed away, about 3 years prior. In 1983, Koresh began claiming the gift of prophecy. Around this time, Koresh began a sexual relationship with Lois Roden. She's the widow of Benjamin Roden, and she's the current leader of the sect of the Branch Davidians. Lois is 67 years old at this time. So David Koresh was a man who clearly had issues with having age-appropriate relationships.
Well, he's going to sleep his way to the top.
Exactly. That's what the captain did. Koresh eventually became...
Slept my way to the bottom.
Yeah, reverse order. Koresh eventually began to claim that God had chosen him to father a child by Lois, who the child would be the chosen one. This is a really interesting an integral part of the story here that I don't think many people know about, right? Because of her age, not only is she the leader, and like you pointed out, this is a strong attempt by him to create this relationship with the leader that nobody else in the group will have. And if he's a good boy, he'll probably get favoritism from the leader and sleep his way to the top. But on top of that, he devises this plan once they're outed, because they kind of keep this relationship secret from the group. Once this relationship is discovered, Koresh turns it into this whole thing of like, well, it's okay, we're meant to be together.
Had another vision touching his pee-pee.
Not only that, proof of that is she's pregnant.
Are you pregnant?
I'm no doctor here, but a 67-year-old, 68-year-old woman getting pregnant would seem like a bit of a miracle to me.
Not when you have a prophet's penis.
And so what he's telling the group is that, look, I'm more than a man.
Yeah, from the prophet Britney Spears. I'm not a girl, not yet a woman.
And I'm closer to God and more involved with God than any of you. And proof of that is I was able to impregnate this older woman, and it's God's will. God wanted this to be done. So he's using this whole thing to separate himself, elevate himself from the rest of the group, and eventually take over as the leader of the Davidians. And we haven't got to that point yet, but meanwhile, these are all lies, obviously. Lois was not pregnant with David Koresh's child.
Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting when looking into this whole Waco situation is it seems like this is the start of more radical ideas coming from David. And at this point, I don't even believe that he's going by David, right? I think he's still Vern. It seems like his initial teachings were positive, peace, love, a little more hippity-dippity, and then it starts changing into this end times prophecy. I'm the chosen one, or I'm supposed to I'm supposed to impregnate somebody so they have the chosen one. It seems like these ideas start shifting a little bit.
It's around this time that Lois Roden allowed David Koresh to begin teaching his own message to the Davidians, the Branch Davidians, and his message was called the Serpent's Root, which caused controversy within the group. Lois's son, George Roden, was intended to be the group's next leader after Lois. But as you can see, Koresh is doing one hell of a job to wedge himself in the middle of the mother and son that were running the show so that he himself could jump rank and become the Branch Davidian leader. You're right, Captain. He's still going by Vern at this point, or Vernon Howell. It was in 1990 that he filed a petition with the state of California to legally change his name. And you have to give a reason for that. And he stated that it was for publicity and business purposes and wanted to change his name to David Koresh. His first name, David, symbolized a direct connection to the biblical King David, from whom a new Messiah would descend. Then we have Koresh, which is a biblical name of Cyrus the Great, a Persian king who is named a Messiah for freeing Jews during Babylonian captivity. So by taking the name David Koresh, he is, according to online reports, professing himself to be the spiritual descendant of King David. And of course, David Koresh, David would make sense as well, as this group is known as the Branch Davidians.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. Who taught you about money? Was it your parents, your school, Let's be honest. Most of us learned about saving and budgeting way later than we should have. But there's good news. You can give your kids a head start with Greenlight.
Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families that lets kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving. The Greenlight app even includes a chores feature where you can set up one-time or reoccurring chores customized to your household and reward kids with an allowance for a job well done. I have some friends that are using this wonderful Greenlight app and the debit card to teach one of their children about responsibility. The kid wanted their own cell phone. Well, that has to come with a service plan. And so the parents worked out a deal with their child. If you are good, if you do your chores, if you listen to mom and dad, if you get good grades and don't give your teachers any of the business, that you can have your own cell phone as long as you can pay the monthly cell phone plan. And that child, that kid, he's paying that monthly plan with his Greenlight app, with the Greenlight debit card. As long as he's good, money gets put in there so he can keep and use that cell phone. This is just one great way, one perfect example of how the Greenlight app will work for you to teach your children about wise spending and wise saving and being responsible.
Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/garage. That's greenlight.com/garage to get started. Greenlight.com/garage.
You all know what speed dating is, right? Well, if you're the owner of a growing business, what if there was a feature like speed dating only for hiring? In other words, you could meet several interested qualified candidates at once, all at a designated time. Well, there's good news because there is such a service. It's called Zip Intro from ZipRecruiter. You can post your job today and start talking to qualified candidates tomorrow. Zip Intro gives you the power to quickly assess excellent candidates for your job via back-to-back video calls. You simply pick a time and Zip Intro does all of the work of finding and scheduling qualified candidates for you. Then you can choose who you want to talk to and meet with great people as soon as the next day. It's so easy. Enjoy the benefits of speed hiring with new Zip Intro only from ZipRecruiter, rated #1 hiring site based on G2. Try Zip Intro for free at ZipRecruiter.com/garage. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/garage. Zip Intro. Post jobs today. Talk to qualified candidates tomorrow.
Do you say data or data? However you say it, it's time to stop overpaying for your monthly data plan with Mint Mobile. Ditch overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data or data, your choice, and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network.
I love Mint Mobile. I'm getting the same high-speed data and data that I was getting with my old service provider, plus I'm getting unlimited talk and text delivered on this great 5G network. It's everything that I was paying a lot more for in the past at a fraction of the price. Currently, I'm saving almost $20 a month with Mint Mobile. No matter how you say it, don't overpay for it.
Shop data plans at mintmobile.com/TCG. That's mintmobile.com/TCG. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Check out mintmobile.com/TCG today. True Crime Garage is sponsored by Roe. Want the fastest working GLP-1 for half the list price? Roe's got you. Roe now offers FDA-approved weight loss vials for half the list price of auto-injector pens without applying insurance or savings cards and with results you can see faster. Your Roe-affiliated provider can help you understand if GLP-1s are right for you and your goals. But that's just the beginning. Row members have support throughout the process. Plus, you can sign up online from the comfort of your own home. That means no waiting for an in-person doctor's appointment, no commute to the doctor's office, and no waiting rooms. Weight loss, faster. Confidence, higher. Price, cheaper. Join the over 385,000 people who have already chosen Row to access GLP-1s. Go to row.co/garage to see if you qualify. That's ro.co/garage. Go to row.co/safety for boxed warning and full safety information about GLP-1 medications. Medication indicated with diet and exercise. Check out row.co/garage today. All right, we are back. Cheers, mates, to the windows, to the walls. Cheers to you, Colonel.
Cheers to you, Captain.
Body of Christ.
Tall cans in the air.
Blood of Christ.
Now, this is around the time that David Koresh is going to say that he's going to get some more instructions directly from the lips of God. So this is when he announced to the group that God had instructed him to marry a
God's just all up in his sex life.
Woman named Rachel Jones. And I hesitated there because I don't know. I didn't list here in my notes how old she was, her age at the time of this announcement. But they do get married. Yeah, they do get married, and she is technically, through the rest of our story and the rest of David Koresh's life, she will be his legal wife. Now, remember George Roden, the son of Lois, who was going to take over control of the Branch Davidians after his mother was no longer in power. We have George Roden and David Koresh. They're essentially at this time battling for control of this sect. Now, there's a large fire that did over $500,000 worth of damage to the compound and the property. It's mysteriously a mysterious arson, let's say.
Yeah,
and
probably
George
caused
Roden,
by somebody in the church.
Yeah, George Roden said that David Koresh started the fire. So you can see where they're starting to try to push and pull and get the majority to choose a side, so that person, that individual, could go on to become the new leader. So George Roden says David Koresh started this fire. He's to blame for the fire. He did all this damage to us. He doesn't love us. He doesn't love you. But Koresh, in response to this, says no man set that fire. That was a judgment of God. It was an act of God. So George Roden had the support of the majority of the group at this time, and he decided to force Koresh and his small group of followers off of the property. And they didn't do this peacefully. They did this at gunpoint. Koresh and his 25 followers were forced off of Mount Carmel's compound and large property, and they went and set up camp in Palestine, Texas, where they lived in very rough conditions. Think about, they're pretty much camping out long term. They're living in buses and tents for the next 2 years. Lois Roden died in 1986. In 1987, George Roden exhumed a body from the group's community cemetery. Roden said that he was just moving the cemetery. That does happen. In fact, the cemetery closest to my home was moved in the 1970s, and it was almost 2,000 grave sites that were moved.
What I would do is just buy a giant boombox, turn on Thriller, and lead the dance parade to the new location.
Let them do the work for you.
Yeah, and be entertained in the process.
That's brilliant. Work smarter, not harder. George Roden exhumed this body, or at least Koresh claims so. And Roden says, no big deal. You know, I'm in charge of the properties here. I'm moving this gravesite. I'm going to be moving the cemetery, the entire cemetery. I don't know the size of this cemetery. I'm guessing it's rather small. David Koresh has got an answer for this too. So he claims that no, George Roden is not moving the cemetery. George Roden had actually issued a challenge to David Koresh and to the followers. Who could resurrect the body, right? Who could resurrect the body would then prove who the leader should be, because that's the powerful one. That's the one that is doing God's will. And so whoever resurrected the body would become the new leader, or this, as David Koresh is explaining and telling to the other followers. And Koresh even takes this to the local authorities. He goes to the sheriff's office to file charges against George Roden for illegally exhuming a corpse.
Yeah.
The sheriff's like, hey, no problem. Just come back here. We need some proof, right? We can't just go and arrest this guy and charge him with something. We need some evidence to back up your claims that he committed this crime. So Koresh and a posse of about 7 armed Koresh Davidians went to the Mount Carmel Center attempting to get a photograph of the body, of the exhumed body. But George Roden wasn't dumb. He believed that Koresh would pull some shit. So Roden now by himself gets the jump on Koresh and company, and a gunfight breaks out. By the time the sheriff and the deputies respond to this gunfight, George Roden had already suffered a gunshot wound and was pinned down behind a tree. They had him surrounded. He couldn't come out. As a result of this incident, David Koresh and his followers were charged with attempted murder of George Roden. Now, at the trial, Koresh explained that he went to Mount Carmel to uncover evidence of criminal disturbance of a corpse, of a crime committed by this George Roden, the one he's accused of attempting murder on.
Right.
Koresh's followers were acquitted. And the David Koresh portion of the case and trial, it ends in a mistrial. So a mistrial was declared. No real outcome there. Nobody gets in trouble. In 1989, George Roden murdered a man named Wayman Dale Adair with an axe.
This guy's a loser.
This is after he says Adair stated his belief that he himself was the true Messiah.
Well, and think about how crazy this is. You have a very small group of people basically worshiping and studying a small group of, or a small section of Christianity, picking and choosing what they preach. And within this group, you have all these individuals jockeying for position, right? So you have multiple male individuals basically claiming that they're the chosen one.
Well, and I tell you what, this portion of the story is it's often not told.
No.
And what I'm taken aback by here is that once you start factoring all these things in, so we have this battle, this infighting that's going on within these Branch Davidians, and a lot of it, had there never been the Waco standoff and siege, I don't know that anybody would know about all these goings on here.
No, and it's kind of sad though too, because we know this event as Waco, Texas. Oh, remember Waco? This is poor Waco. This is outside of Waco. This is not in the city limits of Waco, but they've been painted with this brush because they were kind of out there on their own. If these yahoos would have just killed each other off, we wouldn't have known any of this story.
They were awfully close to doing so on, would appear to be several occasions. But
yeah.
So you have all this infighting. Now let's compound that with all the guns, the gunfights, the digging up of a body,
attempted murder,
the fighting for power, the attempted murder. This is like, and it's all happening in Texas. It's like the Wild West of church.
John Wayne meets Jesus Christ Superstar.
So after George Roden murdered this other man with an axe, this is after this man stated that he was the true Messiah. George Roden's defense was that the man was sent by David Koresh to kill him. So he was just simply defending himself.
And that's a good possibility. I mean, we have to remember Dave Koresh was on trial for attempted murder of Roden. He gets off on a mistrial. Not much after that, a man that is now claiming to be the Messiah himself is coming after you. It's plausible that Roden was telling the truth, that this man was sent to him by David Koresh.
Very likely. It would stand to reason because it goes along with a lot of the other items that we covered so far leading up to this portion of the timeline. Ultimately, George Roden was deemed to be insane by the courts. So he ends up being sent away to a psychiatric hospital. And this will allow David Koresh and his group, with a lot of the downward spiral of George Roden was losing followers, right? And they were all starting to go to David Koresh, who were living in tents and buses outside of Waco, not even at Mount Carmel. But with George Roden gone, and Roden wasn't paying the taxes on the property, on the Mount Carmel property.
Well, he probably didn't believe that he had to.
Yeah, and I don't know what type of income was being generated by Roden or his followers at the time. Because regardless of your beliefs, if you live here in this country anyway, and you own land, you're going to have to pay taxes on that land.
Right.
Eventually, what takes place, Koresh and his group, which is almost everybody now by this point, plus Koresh has picked up some additional followers in the meantime, they're able to pull together their funds and purchase the property, the Mount Carmel property, because of all it defaulting on the taxes.
I was thinking about this. I actually think this is actually an important part of the story, in the sense of we have this group that probably most of the locals are not paying attention to. They know that they're there. They know that they have maybe some strange religious beliefs or teachings, but you have this property that nobody's paying taxes on. So when they get rid of Roden and they actually pay the taxes, you would think that the locals would be going, well, they paid their taxes, they now own the land, and then on top of that, they find some, and I don't know if it was confirmed or not, to be a meth lab, but there was some people that were renting stuff off of Roden. And so then Dave Koresh goes to the authorities and says, hey, there's this drug lab or meth lab. Can you have it removed? So now, if you're the locals, you're probably thinking, well, at least this religious compound is changing for the better.
Well, yeah, and this ultimately, and this is something that's not really discussed or talked about, but the local authorities had no problem with David Koresh or the Branch Davidians. And part of that was because George Roden was deemed to be wrong, right? Even though they're breaking laws and fighting each other.
Right.
But ultimately, he gets sent away to the mental hospital. And so in the eyes of everybody in the community, in the county, Jefferson County, they all believe, well, it was George Roden who was the crazy one and who was wrong. And maybe even his mother as well. So whatever problem they had with the Branch Davidians, the local authorities, that the slate gets wiped clean when the Rodens are no longer around. This act, like you said, of this meth lab, so these people that were renting from Roden, when Koresh gets back there, they stumble on this meth lab, and they do, as you said, report it to the local authorities that go in and shut it down and clean everything up. And this is ultimately deemed to be an act of good faith by the Branch Davidians to the local authorities, where now the local authorities are going, okay, Well, clearly the rodents were the problem. If there were, and so we can get along with, and we don't mind these Branch Davidians being here. They're reporting things that are illegal. And that's kind of how things were at the local level for quite some time. Now, that's going to start to change, because where we left off with the Koresh and his crew coming back to Mount Carmel, that's around 1989. And it actually wasn't until the following year when Koresh changed his name from Vernon Howell to David Koresh.
Old Vern.
You know what I mean, Vern? But we start to have some problems, right? So there's some rumors going on, and part of this is still some additional infighting. So there were Branch Davidians that were no longer part of the group, that when Roden was removed, and when the Rodens went away, that they left the group. And those persons were coming out and going to local authorities with complaints about David Koresh specifically, and saying that he's having sex with underage girls that are members of that church, and that they are stockpiling weapons. And there's truth in these allegations. There's also a reason to kind of hit the brakes on some of these allegations as well. It's, again, there's truth in some of these allegations, but some of these allegations are just purely come about because of bad blood, where somebody who was no longer part of the community, no longer part of the Branch Davidians, decided they didn't like David Koresh, and they were going to go and tattle on him. And it gets very dicey to say what allegations were true and what allegations were completely made up. But they were stockpiling weapons. But part of that was their income that they were generating. Part of their income that they were generating is, think of like a guy that owns a comic shop or a baseball card shop. They're buying guns and then hoping to sell them later at an increased price to make a profit. Now, they do believe in end times. Not only end times, they believe that they're imminent, that they are closer, that they are close. And so part of the stockpiling of weapons is to stockpile weapons. But part of it, too, is to generate some form of income.
Well, one of their main focuses as part of their religious studies and beliefs and sermons, a lot of this was just based around the book of Revelations.
And the thing here, though, is it's Texas. You're allowed to own guns. But the claim is that they are in possession of a bunch of illegal weapons. And then, of course, the claims that he is sexually abusing the children, or some of the children within this group of the Branch Davidians.
Well, I also believe there's claims of physical abuse to some of the children as well.
Correct. So this is going to morph itself into what us, the general population, know to be of Waco. And when we think of Waco, what we remember and what we've heard and seen over the years, that's a very general telling of what led up to February 1993. So on Sunday, February 28th, 1993, agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, they are going to attempt to execute an arrest and search warrants against David Koresh and the Branch Davidian compound. The way this story goes, Captain, is that this was supposed to be an easily executed warrant. The ATF wanted to see what they could find within the walls of the compound, i.e. weapons, firearms. They also wanted to learn what was actually going on inside those four walls. Was there any kind of abuse by David Koresh or any of the other adults in the group?
Right.
They wanted video documentation of the intrusion for documentation purposes, and then many suspect after the fact that they wanted to videotape this for the purpose of sending out to the media. Because keep in mind, this is 1993. The ATF and the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, just had the horrific standoff the year prior at Ruby Ridge. And now we all know how that went down. So a lot of people point to this and say this February 28th execution of this arrest and search warrant was to be a way for them to clean that up, to clean up that mess and say, look, no, this is what we do. This is how we are handling things now. This is to save face a bit. And we're going to go in there. We're going to do it nice and clean. Nobody's going to get hurt. We're going to uphold the law. We're going to find, detect, and see if there are any illegal activities. And if there are, we are going to bring those persons to justice, and we're going to shut down this operation. Quick and easy, nice and clean. The problem here, though, that we should point out, part of this is for them to go in and detect potential signs of child abuse, sexual or physical abuse or what have you. The ATF does a lot of things, but they're not in charge of that. Those are not crimes that they are to be investigating. They hold no jurisdiction over those type of crimes. So it befuddles me how that worked its way into the search warrant in the first place. A judge had to sign off on that.
Well, they have an undercover agent that's made their way into the group, so they're getting reports from him.
But they absolutely have jurisdiction and have power if, in fact, the Branch Davidians are housing, purchasing, and selling illegal weapons.
But there's a couple other things that are happening here, too, because the ATF is in contact with some ex-members of David's clan, if you will. So they are warning against the idea that this serving in the search warrant is going to go as easy as they believe, because they're trying to explain to the ATF and other law enforcement that this is kind of what David preaches about. You might just spark, ignite things into motion that we don't even know are prophecies that are in David's head.
And that's exactly right. This is a group that believes in the teachings of end times, of the apocalypse, and that they will ultimately, everybody will then be judged, and some people will go to heaven in the arms of the Lord, and the truly wrong people, who is, as this group would believe, is the majority of mankind, would go elsewhere, would go to hell. In fact, I believe that part of their belief system is I don't know if they refer to it as purgatory. I know the Catholics do, but they're a big believer in purgatory, or a place similar to purgatory, where you go and even after you have passed, after you have died, you would go there and wait until the actual end times come and judgment comes for all before you can ascend to heaven or descend to hell. And so you're exactly right, Captain. That is what the authorities need to be informed of and be concerned of, because they're taught that the end times are near, and they may very likely come in. They could come in any form or fashion, truly, but there's a possibility that one of those forms that could lead to the apocalypse could be your own government coming after you for your religious beliefs.
So much more to get to on the siege at Waco. Check out truecrimegarage.com. Go to the store page. We got a promo code Easter25 for 25% off. Join us back here in the garage. And until then, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
Hey, everybody, it's Rob Lowe here. If you haven't heard, I have a podcast that's called Literally with Rob Lowe. And basically, it's conversations I've had that really make you feel like you're pulling up a chair at an intimate dinner between myself and people that I admire, like Aaron Sorkin or Tiffany Haddish, Demi Moore, Chris Pratt, Michael J. Fox. There are new episodes out every Thursday. So subscribe, please, and listen wherever you get your podcasts.